Bienvenue au débat. People decided to talk about open source funding, and because it's something that I care deeply about and talk about often, I was asked to host the debate on this topic. So these are a few questions to sort of get you started thinking about this topic. We're also open to having a whole bunch of other questions or discussions around open source funding in general. But the idea was to try to get new perspectives on how to do open source funding, be a bit creative, be a bit out of the box at first, because it's a topic that we've been talking about for a very long time at this point, and we haven't seen a ton of progress, frankly, let's be honest. And so, yeah, if you have new ideas, new thoughts, I think we'd love to hear them and have a conversation about them. I'm going to call up a few people on stage that I have sort of reached out that spoke beforehand or that we talked about or that filled in the form to start answering those questions. So, I'm going to do that. But if you have, new ideas, like feel free to raise your hand and share them. That's the first thing. Second thing, which was suggested to me to do, which I think is a great idea, is, if you've been at the conference for 2 days, you've listened to a bunch of talks, and you haven't raised your hand to ask a question yet, now would be a great moment to do this, because, your voice is important too, and we'd love to hear it. What else? Yeah, please, when you actually raise your hand and ask a question or make a comment or share an experience, please wait until you have the microphone so everyone can hear you. And I think this is also recorded, maybe? I'm not sure. A few people actually answered a survey we put up. Do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to start. I'm Valerie Aurora, principal consultant at OW2con'24 Systems. My background is I lived in Silicon Valley since 2002, worked for IBM, Sun, Red Hat, Intel, and some unnamed small startups. And one of the things I wanted to figure out is why almost everyone who got venture capital funding looked a specific way. And the conclusion I came to is that the people who were directing the funding in Silicon Valley were just there by accident. They thought they were brilliant geniuses and that's how they got rich. No, they were in the right place when software ate the world. The thing I am afraid of and I don't want to see in a new open source funding regime is people trying to copy this, because there's a whole mythology around venture capital and Silicon Valley and how it got to be so good. My favorite example here is how WeWork got funded. Basically, SoftBank had $100 billion, and Masayoshi Son was like, I need your idea that will burn at least $1 billion before it makes money, ideally $10 billion. Because otherwise, why do we have all of this funding? And Adam Neumann said, sure, I'll revolutionize the entire way that people work and live. I need 10 billion of your dollars. I'm going to burn it all, and then you're going to pay me another $1 billion to walk away. Oh, and then I'm going to buy back half the stuff that you... Let's not do that. So
is this recorded?
The thing I learned from that is that there was a market for pitches that made venture capitalists feel like they were brilliant. And smart and techie, and we're going to take over the world. And the thing is they didn't actually know anything. So I really like the NLNet model of handing out the NGI Zero funds, where it's like just incredibly lightweight, short.
That's great, because I was planning to call Pierre over to talk to us about some of that.
And my take on that is like, you should just do a lot of that, and some percentage of it won't work, but that's better than paying that to a bunch of administrators who will also not make the software. So low barrier to getting the funding, and then don't worry about it when you mess it up.
So kind of lightweight seed funding, no strings attached.
And pay attention to the market you're creating, right? So,
interesting.
I talked long enough. The market you're creating is the people who are deciding who to give funding to. So make sure that they want to hear the kind of pitches that result in software actually getting created. Okay, someone else.
I'm actually just going to ask a real quick follow-up question because I actually have read your input. No, and I thought like what you said about what the ideal funding would be for your project and how it would impact you. I think this is important because it's a thing that we kind of miss in general. I feel is to understand like what kind of money does what for people and for projects and for businesses. And I felt like your answer encompassed that really well. So if you...
Sure. The thing I proposed was that lightweight process with repeating year-on-year funding, that there's just a yearly review process. Yes, no, it's not very complex. And that people know, like, if I do X, Y, and Z, I will get the money next year, and they can do long-term planning, which I'm sure the business folks here and up there can appreciate.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Is there anyone in the audience that you would like to...
Yes, I would like somebody who is a parent who is familiar with perverse incentives to replace me. That you've set up rules and you're like, I think what I'll get is this. And instead you get, like, I don't know, somebody playing their guitar at midnight. So.
Does anyone feel like resonates with this request? or like resonates too much, maybe? That's the other option. Yes, no? Okay, Ellen, wonderful, perfect. Please.
Sure. So I guess I'm Michael Meeks. I founded the Document Foundation, which I think raises around €1 million a year in small donations from people, which seems like the ideal magic money tree. It's surprising how many of those people think they're buying a product and complain when, having donated, they can't download. So it's probably a scarcity of competence money stream. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to need a scarcity of something to sell something. Someone has to pay something for something. And that's a bit radical in the world of free everything, you know? And so tragically, we see all sorts of ways of doing that. But the traditional way, I guess, is subscription revenue. And so what I'd like to see is a recognition that handing out small amounts of money on short timelines is not a way to make open source succeed. In fact, it's probably a way to make it fail. So actually, if you put money in this year and you take it away next year, that severely stresses the company. And the more you put in this year in relation to the size of the company, and the more you take it away next year, the more catastrophic this is in almost every case. So I think I would want to emphasize, as Valerie did wonderfully, I think that a longer term horizon and patient investment and subscription revenue. Ultimately, the most beautiful thing is transitioning from a small company which does consultancy, which tends to pay extremely late, 60 days, if it's a government 90, longer days, and then a product company that pays effectively early, a year in advance often. And this is just a nice place to go through that transition from consultancy to product. It's just, suddenly you can relax. Suddenly you can start looking at the future. You can make those strategic decisions that you can't make before, and that's just awesome. So subscription revenue all the way would be my take.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Yeah, I relate very much, and I have many maintainers who have mentioned to me that receiving $10,000 one day and then not knowing like whether the next month they were going to get it or not, or what conditions they were going to get it for, and what to do with it, created more issues really than it solved problems. So yeah, thank you for sharing this.
No problem. The real problem is that consultancy is hard to deliver. It burns out staff. You need to put your best engineers on it. It's really quite stressful. So, and hey, we deliver projects on time and to budget, but at what cost? So yeah. Anyway, over to someone else.
Well, do you have anyone that you would want to? The trick is you have to come here, and then you can actually see people's faces.
I will abandon ship and wander around. Guy Christian is a fantastic guy. I'm sure he has something very sensible to say, and I will leave you to it. Thank you.
Please.
Okay, so I totally agree with what has been said before, and I just wanted to push it a little bit further. Because every time we are speaking about funding in open source, we every time say that there is not enough in funding in open source, right? But like is that for real the case? Because like if we look at statistics, then basically if we talk about open source service market size, then it is $28 billion every year. Like I think last year it was 30 billion. It is growing, and then it's projected to raise until like 100 billion in the 2030. And then if you talk about Europe and not only services but all open source, then it was up to like in the 2022 it was 26 billion euros. So the question is not so much like there is not enough funding in open source, is like more where all this money is going, right? Because as we know, like a lot of open source developers are struggling with getting enough funding. And so if we take a little bit a step in history, you know, like we all know that, right? So like open source started with Stallman, with free software movement. Then it was all around like the values, data privacy, software sovereignty, like community control, etc. Great values, but unfortunately, well, you know, like first there was no business model, and second there was no investors, and moreover, well, if you want to make a great product, engineering is not enough, right? You need like marketing, you need operation, you need legal, yeah, you need a bunch of people that doesn't fit, you know, like on GitHub, more or less. So, and then what people did is like, well, then the usual way is like just to create a company. But then the problem arises, right? Is like if you create a company, that means that who has the control of this company is basically just shareholders. And if your company is successful, well, you are interacting with VC and big corporation, and they are buying over your company. And then after what they are seeking for, well, your values, like community, I think they don't care so much. What they want is a return. And so that is like at the a lot of scenario, like there is like every time like a lot of drama in open source. Sometimes people just decide to close the project. But at worst, at the best case, it is just, well, we keep the code open source, but it's just become like a marketing strategy, right? To say, oh, our code is open source, but who is deciding like where the project is going? Google, Microsoft, or IBM, or whatsoever. And so basically, I really think that you know, like both of those two models, so like a community-based and like having investors and business model, etc., they have good and bad like aspect. And I think really the future of open source will be really like how we can blend commercial success with community ethos. And what we're doing basically at Open Source Economy, we're trying to blend those both worlds, right? What works in a company basically is like you are making money, so you have a business model, you have like, as the person before me was saying, like you have someone who is paying for something because they need it, they need a service, they need whatever. And then you have investors, because in the world of capitalism, without investors, you're struggling. Like, you know, when the neighbors is getting like millions because he was speaking right in front of VC and you get like few donation, good luck to compete. So we have already like these two commercial pillars. And then the third pillar, and the most important, is that the project remain like in the hand of the community. And yeah, and so that is what I think, which is the future of open source. To say there is no problem in the funding of open source, there is a problem of redistribution of funding in open source. And so if we build like a structure that by nature, that by construction cannot be bought over, well, we will win, right? And then we can, like, it's even more than that. We can just say, like, you know, people, like, you know, in open source is basically a dependency tree, right? The people are on the top, they're building product, they can sell something to people. But then there is all those people that are like in the dependency tree, they need also to get some money. And if by construction we can make, you know, like this money go all over the tree, everyone is willing. Yeah, so it is basically our vision.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you. My name is Clément Oudot. I work for Vortex, an open source company. But I'm also a musician. So my question is, anyone here is using Spotify?
I'm also a musician.
Deezer? Okay. So you will see where I want to go, okay? I'm a musician and I put my music on Deezer and Spotify. And of course, I don't have any revenue from these platforms because I'm a too bad singer maybe, but also because these platforms are big players, and as an individual I cannot compete with this platform, and they take my work and they make money with this without sending me too much money. I think you see where I am going to. But
That sounds familiar.
yes, that sounds familiar.
know,
But
the story-
I'm only talking about music for now.
No,
okay?
I know, but the story is like I'm actually I used to be a jazz musician. I
Yes.
got into tech because I just
Yeah.
needed to make money at some point,
Yeah.
and then I went into open source, which was like
okay.
ironic and tragic and stupid. But so yes, I can relate.
Yeah,
to the
okay,
story
you
very
understand. So we're only talking about music, but if you like a musician, maybe you can go at concerts, you can buy maybe disc, or you can do something to give money more directly to the artist than paying for a platform or for people between the artist and you. So now, if we transfer this to open source, I think we can have the same ways to directly contact the artist, which is the developer, and to see how we can directly work with him. And for the music, we have platforms on which you can give a tip every month. You can give $1 or €1, and to have a recurring revenue. So maybe the future, if we try to answer to one of these questions, for me, maybe one of the future of open source funding would be the possibility for any company to give each month 10 euros, 1,000 euros, I don't know, to some organizations. Maybe it could be OW2, maybe it could be a company like Vortex, because we are directly contributing to software, and without expecting any services against it. It's just because you understand that if you don't give a little money every month, you won't. The software won't be stable enough. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Also for the music industry example, because I think it's. I mean, having personally lived it, I think these. There are real similarities in how the money is distributed in the ecosystem, and how it makes it not very sustainable for a large number of people who are trying to make it work, right? So I think it's an astute comparison. No, thank you very much. Does anyone have questions for Clément on this topic? I see a no? Yes? Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, my nickname is Captain, if you want to listen to my music. It was not the question? Okay.
I already knew your music.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's good. No, my question was, we discussed that we were thinking about money cascading on every project, but how could we do that? I mean, we also said previously that, let's say, 80% of software is including open source software or free software, whatever. But that's even if you have freely given money for that from the users, how you are going to split it into every component? I mean, it will be like the Nebraska guy maintaining the infrastructure from XKCD. How you avoid some star system? You are discussing Spotify. Okay, the most famous project will receive all the money if money is given. At the moment, we have no way to retrieve all the money we expect. At the moment, we are discussing that. So we have mostly two different ways. One is people are giving money freely, and okay, it's a choice. And at the moment, it seems that it doesn't work. And the other way is like value-added taxes. You have to pay a fee, and it's mandatory. And at the moment, it's not the choice either. So I don't know how to collect the money, and I don't know how to split the money.
Right. So, I mean, I think this is an interesting problem, because this is kind of what we're thinking when we're talking about this. Is like it feels like we've asked. For me, I feel like I've been on stages for like close to a decade now, saying companies have to make sure that their supply chain is sustainable. Security and sustainability go hand in hand. All of these topics, right? To your point, and like is it like I'm not seeing this work that much, to be honest, right? And so, like, I don't know if we could go in that direction like this, but essentially what you're saying is, like, we need, like, the governments to show up and, like, tax organizations and redistribute those taxes in one way or another. Roughly? Well, I mean, is this... One way, at least. Oh, right, okay. Thank you. What is your name, by the way? I'm sorry. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that question. I see another question right there. And then, Clément, I don't know if you, stay here to answer that question, and if there's someone that you want to invite.
I leave.
There you go, yeah.
No, but maybe, like, if it is a debate, can I answer to you directly? Like, this problem already, like, has been solved, like how to redistribute money. It's like I forgot his name, I'm very bad with his name, but it's a contributor and maintainer of Brew who is doing a project which is called T.HYZ. So basically there is way, like, after you can just check it out, how it works. And also you will see it's quite great because, like, it's not just redistributing a little bit blindly. It's really like people can kind of vote which dependency they prefer, and so who needs to get more money. So this problem is, like, let's say, solved, like, by some project. Which has not been solved is, like, who is giving money from the top, right? And then companies, they will never give money by just free will. So really, like, what is important is that by construction, when we start an open source project, to be sure that never, ever, ever it will be bought by VC or Google or IBM or whatever. And so by construction, they are obliged to give the money, like, back down.
Thank you. Christian, you wanted to say something?
Thanks. I think there are two...
And sorry, Christian.
Yeah, maybe I should...
Please take your name and...
Christian Patterson. I run OpenUp and open source consultancy service. I'm also president of OW2, and previously I was head of the OSPO, or the governance of the Orange Group. I kind of have a feeling there are a couple of questions really here that are kind of circulating. One of them is how to manage the notion of cascade funding if you want the trickle-down effect. And obviously I don't have the answer to it all, otherwise I'd probably be quite rich. But I kind of get the feeling that this is a kind of like a Bitcoin decentralized kind of money comes in and it just goes through the tree, and I'm sure someone who does maths could probably figure out a really cool algorithm for that, which means that all you developers, you're attaching a Bitcoin wallet. And I don't have Bitcoin, by the way, so I don't know really how it works. But imagine if you were a developer, you attach a Bitcoin wallet to the thing you're working on. You don't know if you're going to get any money, but then when somebody uses it, and when that, even if it's several layers up, that project gets some money, maybe it can trickle down and you end up with some money in your wallet. I have no idea.
You might be able to buy coffee.
Well, there is a website, isn't it? Buy Me a Coffee or something like that. Yeah. So I get the feeling that the one aspect is this kind of notion of trickle down, and how do you redistribute the money in terms of how are you going to choose which projects you're going to finance? And I think this is I think the question is quite risky there, because the tendency will be to say we're going to select certain projects, and which means others are going to fall by the wayside. So you're going to select against maybe these smaller niche projects. And then I think there was the other question of how do you ensure that money comes in somewhere into this web of redistribution of value, right? So you could say, well, if you're using open source and you then sell a project, hey, you should give a bit of money to this web of code, I'm going to say. But that sounds a bit like a tax, and open source is not meant to be taxed. And is it the role of government to do that? Because then you get into the notion of government curation. So I think there's there are really two important questions here. It's not just the how do we fund or how do we distribute, it's what rules do we give around that, because otherwise we're going to move away from that notion of open source is free for everyone. Except it's not free for everyone. Someone has to pay eventually.
Thank you so much. Atia, you wanted to say something? Did you want to join on stage, or just want to sit there where it's nice?
I just wanted to comment on what Christian said.
Okay, please, thank you.
Well,
Be nice.
Yeah, I'll try.
And please also, I'm sorry, but also
it feels like
your name and so
Thierry
people.
Carrez from the Open Infra Foundation, also involved in the OSI. I think it's a social problem, and we're not going to design engineer a technical solution for it. Ultimately, the problem is we have a disconnect between the users that have the benefit of the software and the funding. Because we have intermediaries, we basically rely on companies or foundations as like a intermediary scope, and ultimately it's relatively easy to have funding from large companies or the people that benefit from having innovation in the system, but not necessarily from the end users. And unless we find a way to directly get those end users to contribute and pay back the development, we're going to have a problem without no technical solution would solve. And I feel like what we've seen happening is that with disasters like, I don't know, the Log4j or some things, there are like a few moments in history where people, well, oh, maybe we should step up and maybe we should form a group, or maybe we should fund this critical infrastructure. Maybe we should give that guy who is the only one maintaining whatever, like some
the guy
help.
in Nebraska?
Well, the guy in Nebraska, some help, not necessarily some money, but some help, some other maintainers that could step in to help him doing his job. And maybe, unfortunately, maybe we'll need a few other disasters, a few projects disappearing so that people don't take those for granted, because I think that's the key problem. The people consume open source, take it for granted, think it's just going to happen.
I would like to just say one thing. Sorry. We're going to have this just private argument now.
Yeah, you can go out.
You're going to join in. I agree. I think these guys are here to actually talk, and it's us that's talking. Yeah. I think the only thing I would say is that when a small project becomes a critical part of the infrastructure used globally, it was probably not created with that in mind. I.e. the developer probably said, I'm going to make this thing useful, scratches my itch, whatever, right? And it ends up snowballing and being used. So I don't think you can say, oh, well, I need to plan for the future. So I think there needs to be a way of attributing value back down to the developer, because his piece of code is being used by 10 companies, 100 companies, 1,000 companies, etc., etc. And that can't be anticipated. It has to be built in. You can't go backwards. You see what I mean with that?
I do. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. Pierre-Yves.
Maybe, yeah.
Oh.
Otherwise, they are not talking. Yes.
Okay, just because Toby told me to join, saying that I could talk in the name of NLNet. I'm OW2, I'm not NLNet, but
no, I'm sorry. Yes,
but indeed we team with NLNet on the latest NGI initiative, which is called NGI Zero Commons Fund. So it's quite important. It's the most important initiative of cascade funding from the EC ever. It is almost 22 million that will be redistributed in the next 3 years to the community at large. So people can apply for a maximum of 50k euro. So it is small fundings. What is expected is to fund a minimum of 200 or maybe 300 projects, so it will be important in terms of impact. And the idea is reclaim the public nature of the internet. So it starts from, I mean, at a conference some time ago, I was mentioning the fact that 80% of the code in the world was open source. So open source has almost won the competition, and it will definitely. I mean, we can expect that almost all the code in the world will be open. But someone asked me the question or made the remark that, okay, that's fine, open source has won. But if I have GAFAMs systems on BATX that suck my personal data and that give them to states that organize mass surveillance based on them. I mean, it's a dystopy, and the fact that a dystopy is based on open source or not, I just don't care. So the idea behind that kind of funding is also about, it's the last question on the slide, what would be the impact of funding for you? The impact of funding for me should act on the, starting from the idea from Laurence Lessig that code is law, the way code is implemented determines the way, determines your rights on the way the way you will be treated by policy, by states, and the civil rights at large. So it is important that the funding goes to projects and to commons that implement the framework required to build a society which is more inclusive, which is not centralized. So we need protocols like the Fediverse. We need to enforce that kind of decentralization and also privacy technologies, like for example, this NLNet has funded projects like Tor, like WireGuard. They have funded commons like Mastodon, like OpenStreetMap, and so on. So the idea is to fund that kind of project. We need the civil society at large to implement that. We also need public funding to back it, because probably most private companies won't follow or won't provide much funds to reach that kind of objectives. So this is the idea behind NGI and behind what NLNet does. So there are people in the civil society. NLNet is an association. There are also people at the EC, because they obtained the NGI is a part of the Horizon Fund. It's a small part of it, but there were activists there in the EC framework who obtained that and who could distribute funds to the right people to implement that model. So that's the way I see how funding can impact the society and what kind of funding is required to reach that goal.
Well, thank you very much, because I think that the NLNet funding and Horizon... Oh, sorry, you were not finished.
I have to invite someone when I leave the room.
Oh, please do this.
So I will.
That sounds, yes, wonderful. No, but I think it's... Thank you for actually sharing this about this funding, because I don't think that many people actually know that this funding is happening. And I find it really interesting that you're tying this to sort of societal goals and improving society in general. So thank you very much for doing this. And thank you for sharing this here. Why don't you share?
I'm Guy Christian. I'm from a company, an open source company, Arawa. And
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Interrupt you a second, so because I did the hosting thing a bit poorly here.
Okay.
He has to call someone, and so he's going to do this.
Sure.
And then.
And I call Open Food Facts for the last word.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you. I did not know you all were here. Perfect. Thank you. Please. Apologies.
It's okay. So I'm Christian from a company, an open source company. We do consultancy and integration of open source tools. I am going to try to. I'm not going to tackle all of the issues we have raised here, but we have an example, which is an initiative which was created by a company from Nantes, which is called Copy Public. And the idea is for a private company to found on a recurring level different project that they in open source, of course, actually label software on a recurring basis. And the idea is, when we were saying, okay, when we have one software, we have that many dependencies that are hard to detect and everything. The idea is, for example, you can rely actually on people, on your technical people, and because the technical people, they know, okay, we are using, or I don't know, that's operating system, whatever, and we know that for our daily activity, I don't know, we run on PHP or whatever, and based on internal usage, then you can see, okay, we have that dependencies that might need funding, and then you can try to look for the way to give money. You can use like LiberaPay, Open Collective, or making some direct donation. So that's okay. That you are not going to cover maybe all of the dependencies that you are using or that you are relying on, but if you use the people like the internal asset, maybe you can have a sort of first overview of the asset you need to fund. Because as you said, maybe, for example, it's with one specific incident that you will say, oh, we have that one. We say, well, Log4j, for example, that were like very spread. But the thing is, actually start with something, and then you will improve actually your view on your dependencies, and that's what we are trying to do with Copy Public. So you can, I think XWiki also is starting doing the same, and yeah, that's something that we have as private company sort of responsibility before waiting for funds or public resources
or taxes.
We can start doing that like internally first, and then we can do something better. That was the idea. Copy Public, if you want to hear more.
Thank you very much. I really like the idea that you said at the end of saying that to get this going, you should start with funding one thing. You should get the funding ball rolling, essentially, and then like figuring out like the extent of what you have to fund kind of follows, and like the idea is to get started, right?
That's it. Once you start. Someone said that you have the issue of having some stars product, like the one we all know, like, I don't know, Firefox or whatever. Sure, you will necessarily have the stars product, but
right. But then you can start digging into it.
Then you can dig better, and you find better. Yeah, have a global overview.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You can feel free to stay on stage or go somewhere more comfortable as you wish. Unfortunately, you will not be able to bring someone else because we're running out of time, and we're just going to have a few, like a small minute, so that you can sort of give some of your thoughts about this topic.
Yes, I'm Charles Nepot from Open Food Facts. In fact, I'm not sure we are very relevant for the audience in this case, because we of course we are producing open data, open source software, but the open source software is only reused by one organization, which is us. Because we are an open data project, we are often called the Wikipedia of food products, okay? So we are an open database, like very keen from OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap is one of our inspiring project. And so we are not making, we are not the guy in Nebraska, okay?
We thought we had finally found the guy in Nebraska. no luck.
So what is difficult for us is not to find money for projects. And we thanks a lot organizations such as NLNet or NGI for that. We are doing a lot of projects with them already. But what is difficult for us is to maintain the common.
I was gonna say, let me guess.
Yes, and of course, but we could shut down the microphones because we are cheating a little bit. But I think, like many open source projects in the world, we get funds because we are using the funds for projects to maintain the command.
Yeah, this looks.
I'm not sure where I should say that publicly. I think it's recorded in the okay.
No, but
it's a kind of hypocrisy, you know. Everyone do this, of course, and if you want to continue to maintain your open source or your open data project, you have to reuse a little bit of the money from projects to maintain the commons. So what we would like to ask is real concrete money to maintain the public goods, to maintain the commons, to maintain the open source projects. That is very, very important, I guess.
This is a perfect ending. Like, thank you so much. No, seriously, I mean, I have a talk on this very topic. So, that yes, maintenance is like the problem. Like, it's one of the main problems that we have right now. I see a hand raised. Do we have time for? Oh no, this is an FAWT. Did you raise your hand? Oh, please. I think we're out of time. Can we ask Gilles to share? Oh, well, it's done. Last.
So, Gilles Vitton, Head of Community Open Source Program at Orange France. It's not the solution. It would not be possible, but one way we have found, you were talking about taxis, I think it's one solution. There is also one solution that we put in place at Orange France, which is we are a telco operator, so if we need to do open source in telco domain, we will do it internally. So no topic about how financing or maintaining it's easier because we need it. But for other domains where we are not specialists and we don't, the goal is not for us to become expert of all the software that we are using. The way we find it is to say, okay, this. In this domain, we are looking for, I don't know, CRM solution. We have this proprietary solution, and we identify an open source solution. So the idea is to say, for this proprietary solution, we would have this amount of maintenance to pay every year if we want to use it, because as we are an industry, we can't use it without having a maintenance and support. And so the idea is to say, okay, it costs this. We can find perhaps someone, and that's what we try to do because we have more than 12 partners today. We try to find someone that is expert of the CRM solution that is fully open source, and we pay also kind of maintenance every year to this company that is directly contributing to open source. So it's only a good dough. I don't know in English.
Drop of water.
Yeah, a drop of water. But the idea is here. So today we are not directly financing the software that I will give the amount. We have 50 software, 50 free or open source software that we have expertise on through external other companies that help us to have support, and we pay them each year. The amount could vary from one year to another, but there is a minimum amount that we give every year to them to be sure that we will have the expert on the phone ready to answer the question in case of emergency on support or in case of a need to help the project during the build phases or during the study phases.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think this is actually a really interesting model. And as you were saying, I think like there's not no silver bullet, right? There's not one solution that's going to solve this problem. And there's a number of different options that are going to do this. We actually have had the debate extended. So if you all want to continue, we can. If you all want to go do something else, we can also do this. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Patrick Masson from Apereo. Are folks familiar with Moodle, learning management system? It's probably the most widely deployed learning management system. It's not an Apereo project, but they have an interesting model where instead of charging for license the software, because it's a GPL licensed tool, they license the branding. So if you want to call yourself a Moodle provider, if you want to, Soft Delicious wants to put Moodle up as a one-click deployment. If you want to host Moodle, if you want to train Moodle, so even instructional designers and teachers that are doing open content, open educational resources for Moodle, if they want to use that label, they have to join the Moodle Partners Program. Otherwise, Moodle comes after them for a trademark infringement. So their revenue is generated not from the use of the software, but from the brand and the value associating yourself with the brand provides. So I can call myself a Moodle certified support provider, host, trainer, content developer, and they're doing very well, or they're for an open source project. It's just another model.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you. Other stories people want to share? Questions? Please.
Maybe just quickly. So I came here to OW2 to find inspiration, how we can.
Can you please give your name? And
Oh, sorry.
please,
Yes,
please.
Piotr Buliński, independent business owner. I came here because we were trying to figure out how we can make a sustainable business around open source, because we value open source. And I think, to me, the most interesting solution for maintaining open source is really just build a business around it, because then you find the software you care about and you put your time into it and you try to commercialize it by, making deals with companies like Orange, where they need maintenance, but someone has to perform that maintenance. So I just wanted to give my personal award for inspiration to Vortex. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Other people in...
Maybe if I can, so Antoine Mottier from OW2. I was wondering, because so far we speak a lot about the usage of open source software in a professional ecosystem or by government, and I was wondering, all of you as individual, do you finance open source project that you use in your personal life? Like, do you do any kind of donation, recurrent donation? I don't know, maybe if people who do that can raise their hands just to get an idea. I mean, and honestly, myself, I don't know if I should raise my hand because I did it once or twice, but it's not recurring. So I will not be criticizing, but it seems that we have a fair amount of supporters. So I think it's...
The sample is a little bit biased.
Yeah, yes, there is a bias, but I wouldn't expect it so much people, and it's still a start, I think. So
no, fair. Absolutely.
It has to start somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know how much Signal is making out of their donation system, actually, but like, sorry, what? Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm asking because I was thinking about this. No, but I'm wondering, like, if it's, if it looks like money to buy coffee, or if it's actually sustaining most of their business. I don't have data around this. Please. Oh, sorry.
Stefano Maffulli from the Open Source Initiative. So I really appreciate the story of Moodle because that's the way, in my mind, talking about specific examples and sharing the stories is very important, very crucial to find the inspiration. It's a business issue, and it's not trivial to solve. Like so many companies fail in general because they don't nail the product market fit or for any other reasons. So it's difficult to build a business in general. And so building a business around an open source is also difficult. And but one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that the Open Source Initiative is also happy to tell your stories, like to share the stories of businesses and how you've been building a community around managing, balancing the interests of your users versus the paying customers. And if you want to share those, we have an open call for articles on opensource.net. So if you go to the website opensource.net, you will find a way to contribute your story.
I love this call for action. Actually, I think that's great. I'm happy that we could extend the debate to have this. You're right. Like case studies, they're super important. Like it's and you were saying that too. Like it's relatable and makes you like really have ideas. So wonderful. Yeah, there was someone up there.
Romain Georges Orange. I want to share a bad situation during the OS6P the last years. I encounter a boy. We speak with other people, and a boy come to speak with us, and he speak about the Debian distribution. And after, during the meeting, he come and ask us if we can host him because he cannot. He don't have hotel. He don't have solution to sleep. Before he give me his card, so there is a GitHub information. After the meeting, when I go home, I stalk for it. I reach on GitHub to go to see its contribution, and I discover a lot of contribution on Debian project. I work to democratize Ubuntu at Orange, so I feel bad. I feel really bad because this guy is an anonymous contributor, an anonymous committer, and I'm just discover the largest of its contribution, but on the moment I cannot help us. I cannot help him. I'm sorry, and I think it's important to see. We have to found people more than found project.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this very personal story, and it's interesting because it's something that comes up like really often. Yeah, there are people behind software, right? And usually not a lot of people. Interestingly, the Harvard did with Stanford a study on open source. Like you've all heard those numbers a lot of time, like 8 trillion demand generation, all of this data that's been around. One of the pieces of the information of the survey that was really interesting to me is I think like 95% of like the lines of code or the biggest projects are like 5% done by 5% of the people. Like there's this huge discrepancy. There's like very few people that do a lot of thankless, helpless work. When we talk about funding open source, we're also talking about actually like making sure that they're properly sustained. So yeah, thank you very much. Yes, please. Please.
Yeah, so maybe I will not present introducing myself before. So I'm Lauriane. I'm the founder of Open Source Economy, so a non-for-profit organization who helps to accomplish the vision that I was presenting. But then I wanted to come back to the donation problem, because the question is more, how much did you donate it compared to how much do you pay for proprietary software, right? And then, like most of us, we pay way more for proprietary software than for like open source software, right? And following this thought is basically like, why do we do open source? Is that because like we just want to see the code when we run a database or whatever? If you're a software engineer, for me, no. Like for me, like open source is basically like freedom in the software, and freedom should be for everyone. And so for everyone, that means not only software developers, right? So like, for example, when you were thinking about like your solution, great, but for me, that is because you're probably a software engineer, right? Or like your company is around that, and so great for you. But for example, for my dad, who is a history teacher, then it's not for him, unfortunately. And then like how we can do like something for freedom for all of these people is by like having great product, right? Because like if I see, for example, I was talking about my father, what he's using, well, he's using YouTube. And then, okay, like let's try to build YouTube, let's say, that respect the freedom. But for that is incredibly complicated, right? Because you have in front of you, like, I don't know how many millions of investors who are like giving money. So if you don't like have a system that can raise as much as YouTube at minimum, then you will never compete against YouTube. And then finally, well, the freedom will only remains for the people that really care about open source or the software engineers. And then that's why, we really need to have like a system where we can attract investors, because I really think without investors, basically open source will stay in the hand of software engineers, which is not enough. We need to see greater than that. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. More questions.
It's maybe more of sorry, Piotr Puliński again.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Do you want to answer this?
Quick comment. I think what you mentioned is very important, access to knowledge, to resources. So not only people who have the education, but also people who want to do something, can do something. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed is there are programs where you can apply for funds. If you're rejected, you don't get the money, but you also don't join the club. You don't get access to the know-how. You don't get the access to the material. Not always, but sometimes there is a case that you're missing out on the knowledge, which is as important as money. So the money you can find somewhere else, but the know-how, how to build a community or how to work in the community and how to scale the projects, I think that would be very beneficial for organizations operating from public funds to make all the materials open.
That's very interesting, actually. I mean, I think there's a scattered set of documents all over the place, but like, yes, thank you. But like, getting that documentation together would be great. Please.
Hi, my name's Jasper Morgan. I run some technology consulting businesses. And some of our engineers work on open source projects on our time, so we effectively pay them to do that. Some of the problem, open source, so people have said, like Christian also said, open source is free software. And I think part of the challenge in the first question is that some open source is really a freemium model for a business, right? And it's kind of being used to say you can have it for free, but the intention is actually we're trying to make a commercial organization. I think you were saying that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The problem comes is that if you want to start funding open source centrally, how do you determine which open source projects are really free software, versus open source as a freemium model? Because we don't really want to be funding open source projects to support businesses that are failing and using open source as a freemium model.
That's I was going to call this feels like the vendor. What was the title of your talk yesterday? Mm. This felt like a single vendor open source is a new proprietary kind of issue. Yeah, no, astute point. Absolutely. Do you want to sit? It makes me feel awkward to have you there, and maybe you're more comfortable there. I mean, it's up to you, but feel free to. Because we're gonna close this up, and I'm feeling like people are having a conversation in the room, and that you might as well sit more comfortably, because those are not great, right? No. Which, yeah, and plus, feel free to continue to contribute to the conversation. Stefano asked for some shared sort of like stories. If there are people that, oh, wait, I had someone sent me some comments about their own company, and I'm going to look them up and read them before we finish. If I can get that to work. I'm not going to get internet, so it's not going to work. Sorry. Anyone else wants to share something? Like, oh, wonderful, perfect, please. I'm going to do this. Yeah, this is going to be better. So you know what on stage? This is more fun.
Thank you. Whoops. Thank you. So Pauline Vessel, I work at XWiki as a partnership manager, and I also I'm in the Decidim Association, so both two difficulties for funding very different. So I'll talk for the Decidim Association. So what we can rely on, I think, we were talking about the guy in Nebraska and really small project that a lot of, like all the digital infrastructure depend on. I think it's a really different problem than the funding for companies or software like this. And for this, there is the initiative I wanted to share from the German government, which is a sovereign tech fund. If you don't know it, it's a really, really nice fund, and I think they are going to increase the money they dedicate to it. And also the Accélérateur d'Initiative Citoyenne in France, carried out by the DINUM. So I don't know, I think there is a future for those public investment that are trying also to compete with the R&D of the GAFAM. But we are very, very far from the amounts we are talking about for them. But yes, I think for the infrastructure, as all the digital infrastructure of companies, but also public administration depend on, public funds are really important. And we can then talk about companies willingly giving money, but I think this is not yet the theme. Just wanted to share this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Sovereign Tech Fund, so I agree. This way, oh please.
Quick summary of the Signal funding. Signal Foundation was originally funded by a $100 million interest-free loan from Brian Acton, one of the WhatsApp co-founders. 2022, they had $25 million in regular recurring contributions, which I'm not sure how much of that is individual people. So, yeah, a lot of stuff is being funded by billionaires with difficult consciences.
We have, oh, wonderful. And I think this is going to be the last question. Comment.
Oh, it's a comment.
That works too. It's a debate.
The thing also is, so the drop in the water again. The large company have the needs. It's not have the capability, but they need to have this external support often because they will buy it to proprietary software. So either to buy it to proprietary software or to have support and expertise could be the same. And I think today perhaps large users are not enough represented in conference in terms of return on experience, because often the response that we have internally, I can say we, because with Tozit we have the same return on experience about this, often is yes, your open source, it's very nice, but would it work with the volume that we have, with the performance that we need, because we have a large volume of data, we have a very short times response and so on. So yes, it could work in general, but sometimes perhaps not. But the idea there is a pre-received idea that it will not work for. So the idea is if we have more testimonies and if we encourage more testimonies and if we do prices for large users that have testimonies and so on, it will help for large users to say, oh, this large user has done a return experience of this, perhaps we can get to it instead of continuing with our very expensive proprietary solution. So there is also all the communication aspects about return on experience of similar people that could help to launch the same models that we have built, for example, but also other models perhaps, but at least what we set up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it goes sort of along the line of what Stefano was saying before, which is people need to hear stories and be able to relate to buy into something, right? And so, yes, wonderful. Well, listen, I think we're at the time. Thank you so much, all. I think you should all give yourselves a huge round of applause. And thank you for the people who played the game and sat on stage for a very long time before they got to talk. And thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed the conference. And hopefully see you next year. Thank you.